Okay, we'll do a short study now of one of the verses that we read. A very interesting verse. The verse is in part of the blessings. So the blessings are structured, we're familiar with it, it's conditioned. If you follow the laws, you obey, you're loyal to God, you'll get all these blessings. And then a much longer section called the curse or the tochacha. If you won't be loyal to Hashem and won't perform the mitzvot, then all these curses will come. Now, part of the blessings is a verse that talks about how Israel will pursue and win the battles against its enemies. So let's look at this verse and see there's something strange about the verse. I'm going to share my screen and let's read the verse. So the verse in Hebrew is "V'radfu mikem chamisha me'ah u'me'ah mikem revava yirdofu." So I need a volunteer to read the English. So who wants to volunteer to read the English translation? Anyone?
Okay.
5 of you will pursue 100, and 100 of you will pursue 10,000.
So as you see here, I wrote, there's something wrong with the ratio here, right? If
Not the same.
5 it will pursue 100, then if it was linear, 100 should have pursued, I'm going to write it down. It should have been right. If 5 times 20 is 100. So 100
Right.
times 20,
This is 2,000.
1,000.
Yeah.
But the Torah uses the word revava, which from other places in the Bible is clear. It means 10,000. So it's wrong by a factor of 5, right? Instead of the 2,000, which should have been there, the number, the number is 100 of the Israeli people will be able to pursue 10,000 of the enemies. So immediately Rashi asks this question. So let's read Rashi's question. Rashi, and based on the Sifra, on the Midrash, which is even much older than Rashi, they saw the mathematical anomaly here. And they ask, but is this the correct calculation? Should scripture have not written here, and 100 of you will pursue 2,000? And the Midrash answers, the Torah teaches us that there's no comparison between a few who fulfill the Torah and many who fulfill the Torah. So I'm asking, does this mean that the Torah is telling us about the blessing, the nonlinear, the exponential benefit of people coming together? It's much more than if each one does it alone. When they're together, it's not simply a multiplication factor of each one by himself times the number of people, but there's added value. So that's what Rashi is trying to tell us, that when many people come and do good deeds together, then it's much more powerful. That's why they were able to pursue the 100 of the Israel people, when following God's laws, are able to pursue 10,000. But there's a problem, or it's not so simple, because this blessing of unity, I call it, the exponential power of people doing things together as a group, seems also to appear when people are doing bad things. And what do I mean by that? So when people can join together, as we know, as Martin will tell you from his experiences in the Holocaust, as Isaac will tell you, who saw with their own eyes, thousands and thousands of people can join together, can be incited to do bad things. And is that also hinted in the Torah? So I want to refer you to a section in the book of Deuteronomy, in Devarim. That section is the Haazinu, the song of Haazinu. And in that song, I want to share that screen with you. It's a punishment, really. It's Moshe is telling Bnei Israel, when you enter the land of Israel, I know you're going to betray God, and here's all the punishment, and there's going to be the enemies will come, they will rout you, they will inflict terror on you, and you will die by the sword. And there's all these terrible descriptions. And then at a certain point in that poem, in that shirah, there's this verse that says, Lu chachmu. I hope everybody can see it. Yeah,
Yes.
Mhm.
it's on the screen, right? I shared it.
Yes.
Yeah. So lu chachmu yaskilu zot yavinu lacharitam. If they were wise, they would understand this. They would reflect upon their fate. And now here's the key phrase: Echa yirdof echad elef. How can one of the enemies pursue 1,000 of Israel? Ushnaim yanisu revava. And two of the enemies put revava, 10,000 to flight. Then those two will put 10,000. And then it continues, Imlo kitsura mecharam vadonai hisgiram. Unless their mighty rock has sold them out and the Lord has given them over. So what's this phrase trying to say? They're saying the enemies have this amazing victory. One of the enemies pursued and routed 1,000 of the Israelites. Two of the enemies pursued and routed 10,000, and they think it's because they're so powerful, but really it's because God sold out the people of Israel because they betrayed them. But let's look at the numbers here. Again, it's the wrong ratio, because if one enemy was able to pursue 1,000 of the Israelite people, then two enemies, what should have been?
2,000.
Right? I'm going to write it again. 2,000. Instead, it says two enemies will rout 10,000 of the Israelites. So again, it's the nonlinear ratio, and it's by a factor of 5. The same factor of 5 that we found in the blessings. So isn't that very interesting? That it's not only when Israel will have the blessing that they can, when they come together, they'll be able to rout their enemies in a way that's way more powerful than each one had done it individually, but that same extra power that you get from being together is applied to the enemies of Israel. And they also have that exponential increase in their power. So what is, and here Rashi doesn't say, well, isn't the math wrong? And the Midrash doesn't say that. And I looked, tried to find any commentator that will address it, and most commentators are silent. And here they don't talk about that. Wait a minute, maybe the enemies can also have that same power, that exponential power of coming together. So I think what this teaches us is that it's not enough to talk about unity, because as we saw, there could be unity to do terrible things. And we just have to look at the history, and we can look at recent events. We can look at the people who congregated and demonstrated in Michigan and Virginia against the quarantine, against the shutdowns, wanting to be free and all that, and not ignoring the advice of health experts, and basically saying, we don't care if people are going to start dying again, we just want to open the economy. And so people can congregate to promote terrible things. So it's not just about unity. It's really unity for what? For justice, for promoting the welfare of all the people, for promoting the rights of people. And that's what's the key factor. So we like to talk about the importance of unity, but the Torah just showed us that unity can be abused, right? It can be used to do great things. And in fact, in our community here, we've seen people come together during this pandemic to help each other out, and really beautiful things at organizations and tzedakah organizations. And in our shul, people are calling each other, and that's great. But we always have to be mindful that certain elements in populations, and certainly we saw in recent history, in dictatorships, in Nazi Germany, in Soviet Russia, and people can join together in the name of unity to do terrible things, which is what was in the Ha'azinu song, right? That phrase that was right there. I did find, I'll just finish, we have 2 minutes. I found a modern day commentator. His name was Asher Wassertil. And he said something very interesting. And then when I looked at his history, it explained. So let me share the screen so that you could read what he said. He's like one of the only commentators of all the, Rashi and Ibn Ezra and Ramban and Sephora. None of them talk about this extra power of the enemies. Okay, we talked about this. I saw the power of the aggregate. We saw that, okay, the individual pursuer becomes 5 times as powerful when he was working in a larger group. Either way, the enemies can pursue us. Okay, and now let's skip to, okay, Birkat Asher. He wrote a book called Birkat Asher. I'll read the Hebrew and translate. He says, Khan, here, Benigud Sefer Vayikra, in contrast to the blessing in Vayikra and Bechukotai that we read from the Torah today, Ein Rashi shoel al cheshbon habilti mechuvan. Rashi doesn't ask that question. Wait a minute, the math is wrong, the ratio is wrong. Ve'ulai ze kedei lo lehavlit et koach ha'achdut etzel hagoyim ha'oivim. Maybe this is so that not to emphasize the power of unity that the enemies goyim can have when they join together, right? And he is talking about what I just mentioned. And he says, we don't want to talk about it. We all know it's there, that they can do these terrible things, that they can come together, they could unite to do terrible things. And when you look at his history, he lived in Germany, was a brilliant scholar in the Hildesheimer Yeshiva in Berlin. And then in 1939, last minute, he got a certificate to immigrate to Israel. He knew some officer in Nazi Germany was able to get and escaped in the nick of time, and then was in charge of a lot of the education or departments of education in Israel as the state was established and after the state was established in Israel. So in the nick of time, he escaped the horrors of Europe, of the Holocaust and World War II. And many of his friends and rabbis didn't. So he knows, that the what he calls the koach ha'achdut shel ha'oivim, that the enemies can also have that power of or exponential power when they come together, when they unite to do terrible things. I think that's a very powerful lesson that I think we should talk about it, right? He says Rashi didn't want to talk about it but I think it's important to emphasize that while unity is an important value, the real question is, what are we uniting for? And always have to keep that in mind. And let's all pray that we're going to unite to do great things and to help each other and to find the safe way to get out of the pandemic without endangering other people. And everybody should have a refuah shlema. And hopefully we'll see you all back in shul soon.
Yashkoach.
Wow.